July 1943, Camp Concordia, Kansas. Corporal Klaus Richter found himself in a surreal situation. An American captain was outlining work programs to 200 German prisoners, treating them like potential employees rather than captured enemy combatants. Klaus, still adjusting to a clean uniform after weeks of grime and combat, shifted uncomfortably on the wooden bench. Just 3 weeks prior, British tanks had overrun his position near Tunis. He'd surrendered, anticipating a swift end or brutal treatment. Instead, British soldiers offered water, the first shock. The subsequent sea journey to America brought Red Cross volunteers distributing cigarettes and chocolate, the second shock. But this wage system, described by the captain, was the ultimate dismantling of every fixed belief Klaus had held. Agricultural labor pays 80 cents per day, the captain stated in German. Road construction, 75 cents. Light manufacturing, 65 cents. Wages are credited to your camp account for canteen purchases. Klaus exchanged a bewildered glance with Sergeant Werner Hoffmann, his comrade since Poland, through France and the Eastern Front until their division met its end in the desert. Werner, his face scarred, whispered, "He said wages." "It's voluntary," Klaus replied, equally incredulous. "We can refuse." "And still eat?" Werner pressed, voicing the unspoken question in every German mind. The food, since their arrival, defied everything Nazi propaganda had claimed about a starving America. The previous night's meal, thick beef stew, white bread with butter, coffee with sugar, surpassed anything Klaus had eaten since 1941. Camp Concordia seemed to overflow with unimaginable abundance. Dismissed, Klaus joined the other prisoners, stepping into the glaring Kansas sun. The camp spread before them, rows of spotless barracks, a recreation area with volleyball nets, a canteen, even a small library. Guard towers punctuated the perimeter, but the American guards seemed bored, devoid of the expected hostility or brutality. They were just young men in olive uniforms, watching prisoners move freely within the compound. "I don't understand," Werner muttered as they walked towards their barracks. "Where are the work gangs? The punishment details?" Klaus had no answer. He thought of his brother Johann, sifting through rubble for food in Hamburg, his mother meticulously rationing sawdust-filled bread, and his father enduring 12-hour factory shifts on meagre rations. Here, in an enemy prison camp, Klaus had consumed more food yesterday than his family likely had in months. The stark contrast was deeply unsettling. Later that afternoon, an American sergeant escorted a group of volunteers to the canteen. Klaus, driven by curiosity, joined them. Inside, shelves stocked items that seemed incongruous with wartime: chocolate bars, cigarettes, razor blades, playing cards, writing paper, even Coca-Cola. Each item bore a price in cents. "How do we pay?" a prisoner asked in broken English. "Sign for it," the sergeant explained. "It's deducted from your work account if you're on a detail. Otherwise, you get 10 cents weekly allowance from the government." 10 cents for doing nothing, Klaus quickly calculated. A 15-cent chocolate bar represented 2 weeks of allowance. Yet a single day of agricultural work, whatever that entailed in Kansas, could buy 5. The math defied all the propaganda about American ruthlessness. A prisoner ahead of Klaus signed for cigarettes, receiving a pack of Lucky Strikes without ceremony or degradation. Just a simple transaction. Werner remained skeptical, refusing to buy anything. "It's a trap," he insisted as they left. "They make us comfortable, then turn brutal, or they're fattening us for some unknown purpose." But Klaus was no longer so sure. The morning's hot shower, complete with lathering soap, had been real. The barracks offered actual mattresses on metal beds, not vermin-ridden straw. The latrine boasted flush toilets and running water. Every detail contradicted the brutal descriptions of American prison camps depicted in German propaganda films. That evening, Klaus joined the food line. The American cook, a burly man with thick forearms, ladled beef stew into his mess tin. Another server added 2 slices of white bread. A third offered coffee. Klaus carried his tray to a table, joining fellow prisoners, and ate in silence. The stew was hot, seasoned perfectly, rich with vegetables and meat. His stomach, accustomed to meager desert rations, protested the richness even as his body craved more. Around him, confused German voices rose. Some clung to familiar rationalizations. This was temporary, designed to lower their guard. Others speculated about American motives. A few simply ate, accepting the current reality without attempting to reconcile it with past beliefs. After dinner, Klaus wandered to the recreation field where prisoners played volleyball. American guards observed from a respectful distance, not interfering. The ball arced over the net, and men laughed, genuinely laughed, as if they weren't prisoners of war, thousands of miles from home. Klaus found himself at the fence line, gazing at the endless Kansas farmland. Neat rows of corn stretched to the horizon, tended by what appeared to be civilian farmers. The land showed no bomb craters, no scorched earth, no signs of war. America seemed untouched by the conflict raging in Europe and North Africa. The disconnect was staggering. First time seeing it, a German voice asked beside him. Klaus turned to see an older prisoner, perhaps 40, with corporal stripes. "I'm Friedrich, captured at Kasserine Pass in February." "Klaus, Tunis, 3 weeks ago." Friedrich nodded. "You're still processing it. The bounty, the treatment. Were you on a work detail?" "Agricultural. 6 days a week since March." Friedrich offered Klaus an American cigarette. "We harvest wheat, work sugar beet fields, whatever the local farmers need. They pay the army pays us. 80 cents daily, credited to my account. I've bought cigarettes, writing paper, even a harmonica from the canteen." Klaus accepted the cigarette. Friedrich lit it, and they smoked in silence. The tobacco was smooth, unlike the harsh Turkish blend in Wehrmacht rations. "What are the Americans like?" Klaus asked, referring to the farmers. "Polite, distant. Their sons are probably fighting in Europe or the Pacific, so they're not exactly friendly, but they don't mistreat us. They provide water, lunch. Some even say thank you when we finish a day's work." Friedrich exhaled smoke. "That's the strangest part. Enemy farmers thanking German soldiers for picking their crops." Klaus tried to envision himself in a Kansas wheat field, working under American supervision, receiving thanks and wages. The image refused to form. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for such a scenario. "Do you believe it?" Klaus asked. "This wage system, the food, all of it?" Friedrich pondered the question. "I've been here 4 months. I've earned over $100 in camp scrip. I've eaten better than I did in uniform. The guards treat us better than the Geneva Convention requires. Either this is an elaborate, months-long deception for reasons I can't fathom, or the propaganda we were fed about America was entirely false." He paused. "I'm beginning to suspect the latter." That night, Klaus lay on a real mattress, with sheets and a blanket, staring at the barracks ceiling. Around him, 24 German soldiers slept soundly. No one shivered from cold. No one scratched at lice. No one groaned from untreated wounds or hunger. The sheer normalcy of it felt profoundly abnormal. Klaus considered the work program: 80 cents a day for agricultural labor, over $20 monthly if he worked 6 days a week. Enough for cigarettes, chocolate, toiletries, and writing materials for home. Enough to feel almost human again, to reclaim small dignities stripped away by war. But taking the work meant accepting American generosity. It meant acknowledging that hostile treatment exceeded what his own country had provided its soldiers. This realization had implications Klaus wasn't ready to fully explore. If Americans weren't the monsters propaganda depicted, what else had been a lie? What did that say about the cause he'd fought for? The comrades who died believing Nazi teachings of racial superiority and American degeneracy. The questions swirled as sleep approached. Tomorrow he would decide about volunteering for work details. Tonight he would rest on clean sheets in a heated barracks with a full stomach, trying not to think about his family scavenging for food in a bombed German city while he lived in comfort as a prisoner of the enemy. The cognitive dissonance was almost physical, a weight on his chest. Klaus closed his eyes, but in the darkness he still saw the American captain's calm expression offering wages, heard Friedrich's quiet acceptance that their beliefs might be false, and tasted the beef stew and white bread and sweetened coffee that should not exist in an enemy prison camp. Morning would bring decisions, but tonight Klaus simply lay still, feeling the mattress beneath him, wondering what it meant that his captors treated him better than his own officers ever had, offering payment for work when he'd expected only brutality. The answer, when it came, would require dismantling the certainties he'd built his adult life around. That process terrified him more than any battlefield. He fell asleep, still grappling with the question that would define his captivity. If the Americans were so humane, what did that say about the regime he had served? The camp store, open daily, except Sunday at 0800, introduced Klaus to unexpected choices. His initial wages, 80 cents daily, 40 on Sundays, provided access to American goods like Hershey bars, Wrigley's gum, and Lucky Strike cigarettes, items he recognized from pilfered Allied supplies in North Africa. Yet here they were available for purchase. A candy bar, reminiscent of childhood Christmas treats, tasted of a Germany now distant. Tuesdays, Mrs. Henderson, a civilian librarian, brought German and English books, magazines, and newspapers. In the recreation hall, Klaus and other POWs perused an October 1943 Life magazine, its pages depicting American factories churning out tanks, aircraft, and ships in numbers far exceeding Germany's peak production. One spread showed well-dressed American housewives unburdened by ration cards, shopping in fully stocked grocery stores. He passed the magazine to Obergefreiter Heinrich Müller, who silently absorbed the images. Later, Heinrich confided that his sister's Red Cross letter reported Hamburg's bread rations cut to a mere 200 grams daily, a stark contrast to the white bread and butter served twice a day in their American mess hall. December brought Klaus to the Jacobson farm, 15 kilometers west of Concordia, expanding his understanding beyond the camp. Ernest Jacobson, a robust man in his 50s, directed the POW detail with the same efficiency he managed his own sons. Their task was repairing storm-damaged fence lines, a strenuous labor in the freezing Kansas wind. Mrs. Jacobson brought hot, real coffee, not the ersatz chicory Klaus recalled from home, addressing them in careful English, even asking if they needed warmer gloves. This kindness, despite the Jacobsons having lost a nephew at Anzio 3 months prior, was more disorienting than hostility might have been. During lunch in the warm barn, Jacobson showcased photographs of his farm's technological evolution: tractors, combines, irrigation systems. This advanced machinery made German agricultural methods appear antiquated, leading Klaus to realize an American farmer possessed more sophisticated equipment than many Wehrmacht supply units he'd served with in Tunisia. Thursday evenings offered recreational activities that further dismantled Klaus's preconceptions. The camp gymnasium, a converted warehouse, hosted spirited volleyball matches between POW companies, with guards participating, laughing at their own errors and commending German players' spikes. Sergeant Williams, a slender guard from Georgia, taught Klaus the rules and demonstrated an overhand serve. The casual interaction, American soldier and German prisoner playing together, was something Klaus struggled to comprehend. In Germany, such fraternization would be treasonous. Here, it was open, even encouraged, as if recreation was essential to prisoner welfare, not a privilege. Colonel Harrison, the camp commandant, occasionally observed, nodding approval at the peaceful proceedings. Saturday nights featured the camp's most surreal offering, movie screenings. The recreation hall became a cinema, showing westerns like Stagecoach with John Wayne. Klaus, among 200 POWs, watched American frontier mythology, individual courage, resourcefulness, frontier justice. These themes paralleled the propaganda he'd absorbed about Germanic virtue, but with American heroes. Some POWs laughed at the cowboys' exaggerated accents, others watched absorbed. Klaus noted how the film portrayed authority figures, like sheriffs and cavalry officers, as servants of community law, not state power, a subtle yet fundamental distinction. Barracks discussions after the film dissected these assumptions. Feldwebel Otto Krauser, a former Leipzig school teacher, highlighted how American popular culture celebrated the common man elevated by merit, not birth or party loyalty. This contrasted sharply with the obligatory Hitler youth films promoting sacrifice for Führer and fatherland. The American film merely offered 2 hours of entertainment. Sunday mornings brought the sharpest cognitive dissonance. The camp allowed Protestant and Catholic services led by local Concordia clergy. Father O'Brien, an aging Irish priest, celebrated Mass in the refurbished chapel. Klaus, raised Lutheran but not devout, attended out of curiosity. 40 German Catholics sang hymns in their native tongue as an American priest administered sacraments. No guards or political officers observed. This separation of faith from state oversight seemed almost reckless to Klaus, contrasting with German churches increasingly under National Socialist control, their sermons vetted for ideological correctness. Father O'Brien spoke individually with prisoners afterward, inquiring about their families and needs, even mentioning a local Catholic women's group collecting winter coats for POWs. This act of charity was difficult for Klaus to reconcile with the war raging between their nations. The medical clinic revealed yet another aspect of American abundance. Klaus reported Monday morning with a cough from fieldwork. Dr. Morrison, the camp physician, examined him thoroughly as he might an American patient. The clinic boasted X-ray equipment, modern surgical tools, and a well-stocked pharmacy. Dr. Morrison prescribed sulfur drugs and excused Klaus from outdoor work for a week. The medication arrived within hours, free of charge, documented but not deducted from his wages. Klaus remembered the Wehrmacht's chronic medical shortages, field hospitals lacking anesthesia or antibiotics even before 1943's defeats. Here, enemy prisoners received treatments German soldiers increasingly lacked, a contradiction that challenged every lesson about American industrial weakness and moral degeneracy. If prisoners received such resources, what advantages did American soldiers enjoy? The camp canteen became Klaus's portal to American consumer culture. Beyond candy and cigarettes, shelves held safety razors, aerosol shaving cream, toothpaste in metal tubes, pomade, playing cards, harmonicas, chess sets, and high-quality writing materials. Klaus spent 65 cents, 3 days' wages, on a fountain pen, marveling at its smooth mechanism. It wrote better than any pen he'd owned civilian life. He composed letters to his mother in Hamburg, carefully worded for censorship, describing his safety and health, but omitting details that might distress her. Her irregular Red Cross letters painted increasingly bleak pictures of life in bombed German cities, shortages of coal, food, soap, clothing, and hope. The stark contrast between her deprivation and his relative comfort ignited a guilt that haunted his nights. He occupied a strange liminal space, an enemy prisoner living better than his own civilian countrymen, a German soldier fed by American abundance while German citizens starved. As winter deepened, barrack discussions grew more candid. Klaus shared quarters with 15 other Afrika Korps veterans, men who fought across North Africa before surrendering in Tunisia. Their conversations increasingly questioned the propaganda that had shaped their understanding of the war. Gefreiter Paul Schmidt, a former Berlin machinist, calculated American industrial capacity based solely on camp supplies. If a Kansas POW camp possessed such abundance, what resources did America command overall? Obergefreiter Johann Weber, a former Munich accountant, estimated American war production using figures from Mrs. Henderson's newspapers, concluding the Reich's official reports drastically understated enemy capabilities. Klaus listened, saying little, processing information that contradicted everything he once believed about American weakness. Some POWs, devout National Socialists, dismissed such talk as defeatist, insisting camp conditions were isolated exceptions, American propaganda designed to undermine German resolve. Klaus watched these men refuse work details, eschew canteen purchases, and cling to ideological purity. They grew thinner, more isolated, certain in their beliefs, even as evidence against their worldview mounted. Christmas 1943 delivered the most disorienting experience. The camp allowed POWs to decorate barracks, hold celebrations, and receive packages from home and American charities. Local churches donated Christmas trees, ornaments, and wrapped gifts. Klaus received wool socks, chocolate, cigarettes, and a small Bible, gifts from strangers in Concordia's Lutheran congregation. The gesture overwhelmed him. These Americans, who had lost sons and brothers fighting his country, nonetheless showed mercy to their enemies. The mess hall served a lavish Christmas dinner: roast turkey, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and pie, with portions so generous many couldn't finish. Guards wished them Merry Christmas in broken German, some sharing cigarettes or photos of their families. Klaus imagined his mother's Christmas, likely in a frigid apartment, subsisting on meager rations from Hamburg's ruined infrastructure. The contrast stirred crushing ambivalence. He felt grateful for his circumstances, yet ashamed of that gratitude, loyal to Germany, yet questioning the leadership responsible for such destruction. Alive and healthy, while comrades died in Russia and Italy. January 1944 marked Klaus's third month in American captivity. The routine became a comforting familiarity. Morning roll call, breakfast, work details or camp duties, lunch, afternoon recreation, dinner, evening leisure, lights out at 2200. This predictability was a luxury after years of military chaos. Klaus found himself looking forward to work assignments, especially visits to local farms where American civilians treated him as temporary hired help, not an enemy prisoner. His English improved daily through interactions with guards and farmers. Sergeant Williams taught him baseball terminology, explaining rules Klaus found baffling yet oddly appealing in their structured complexity. Williams promised a POW baseball league in spring, Americans versus Germans in friendly competition. Klaus struggled to envision it. The war raged elsewhere, but here, in this peculiar American prison, different rules, different possibilities applied. He carefully saved his wages, dollar bills and coins, representing potential futures yet undefined. Some POWs spoke of American residency post-war, using skills learned in captivity to build new lives in this land of inexplicable abundance. Others planned immediate return to Germany, loyalty to the fatherland unshaken. Klaus remained uncertain, suspended between worlds, watching spring approach across the Kansas plains while across the Atlantic his homeland burned, and in that burning landscape his mother awaited an end to a war that, by any honest assessment of his observed reality, already felt lost. In September 1946, Klaus Richter, a repatriated German POW, received his first meager wage packet in war-torn Hamburg. Having returned from American captivity aboard the SS Marine Flasher, Klaus, weighing 158 pounds after an 11-day voyage and 3 weeks navigating destroyed infrastructure, immediately felt the stark disparity between his past American diet and Germany's 1,200-calorie daily ration. He had lost 15 pounds since boarding in Norfolk, Virginia, a stark physical testament to his new reality, contrasting sharply with his memories of Camp Concordia's ample mess hall. Klaus's decision to return to Germany was not straightforward. In July 1946, at Camp Concordia, Kansas, he learned of opportunities for skilled German POWs to extend their stays in America through labor contracts, particularly in agriculture. While two barracks mates, both automotive mechanics, pursued this option, Klaus, a carpenter earning 80 cents daily at the camp sawmill, seriously considered it. He wrote to his mother in Hamburg. Her reply, arriving 6 weeks later, painted a grim picture. 75% of Hamburg destroyed, his father's printing business gone, and his younger sister deceased in the 1943 firestorms. Faced with her desperate need, Klaus forfeited his chance to remain in America, signing his repatriation manifest on August 2, 1946. His journey home bore little resemblance to his 1944 capture. Then, as an Afrika Korps prisoner transported from North Africa to Newport News, he expected harsh treatment. Instead, he encountered an anomalous American system of wage labor for prisoners, a practice that defied German propaganda about capitalist exploitation. On the Marine Flasher, discussions revolved around what they were leaving behind. Werner Schmidt recounted earning 70 cents daily on a Nebraska farm, spending it on canteen luxuries. Heinrich Vogel, from a Minnesota lumber camp, had saved $112 in scrip over 18 months, converted to goods due to currency transfer prohibitions. Klaus himself earned about $240 during his 22 months at Concordia, used for English textbooks, a harmonica, and letters home. Hamburg in August 1946 was unrecognizable from the city Klaus left in 1941. British occupation authorities registered him in Altona, issuing ration cards and a temporary residence permit. He found his mother, now 97 pounds from her pre-war 140, living with two other families in a partially destroyed apartment, water from a street pump, windows covered with cardboard. She wept listening to Klaus describe Camp Concordia's Sunday dinners of roasted chicken, potatoes, green beans and apple pie, unable to comprehend such abundance. His relatives, including an uncle who returned from a Soviet POW camp weighing 89 pounds with chronic health issues, listened with a mixture of disbelief and resentment as Klaus spoke of camp baseball games and weekly movies. Klaus secured work in September 1946 through the British military government. The Trümmerbeseitigung, rubble clearing program, employed thousands of returning soldiers and civilians. As a carpenter, he was assigned to a salvage crew, sorting bricks for reuse, working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. His pay was 1 Reichsmark an hour, plus an extra 300-calorie ration. By October, severe inflation meant his weekly wages could barely buy used work boots on the black market. He frequently contrasted this with his 80-cent daily wage at Concordia, which had purchased tangible goods from a well-stocked canteen. The irony was not lost on him. He was better compensated as a prisoner in enemy territory than as a free man in his own country. The post-repatriation years were economically challenging for most returnees. In April 1948, Klaus married Anna Hoffmann, whose fiancé had died on the Eastern Front. Their wedding meal was meager: black bread, margarine, ersatz coffee. Anna's secretarial job for the British occupation provided crucial supplemental rations. Klaus continued in construction as Hamburg slowly rebuilt, with Marshall Plan funds beginning to provide real wages and materials by 1949. He rarely discussed his American POW experience outside his family, sensitive to the resentment it might provoke among those who suffered in Soviet or British camps. His younger brother, for instance, returned from a Soviet camp in 1949, weighing 79 pounds with permanent kidney damage. Klaus's tales of American abundance seemed almost offensive in comparison. In 1952, Klaus reconnected with Heinrich Vogel, his Concordia barracks mate, now a machinery technician in Hamburg. Heinrich, despite Germany's Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle, increasingly considered emigration, drawn by his memories of Minnesota's vastness and efficiency. In 1954, Heinrich emigrated to the US under the Refugee Relief Act, settling in Minneapolis and working for a farm equipment manufacturer. He corresponded with Klaus for years, detailing his American citizenship in 1959 and house purchase in 1961. Klaus considered following, but ultimately stayed due to Anna's dependent elderly mother and his flourishing carpentry business, established in 1953, with a prospering democratic Germany providing opportunities. Klaus Richter retired in 1979, a successful historic building restoration contractor. He and Anna raised 3 children, none serving in the military. A consistent Social Democratic Party voter, he championed European integration and reconciliation. He never revisited the US, but remained a keen follower of American news and corresponded with Heinrich until his death in 1988. To his grandchildren, Klaus spoke predominantly of his American captivity, detailing it with precision and a nostalgia that perplexed younger generations. He died in Hamburg in 1994, aged 76, leaving a detailed Camp Concordia diary donated to the Kansas State Historical Society in 2001. The German POW experience in the US profoundly shaped post-war transatlantic relations. Between 1943 and 1946, approximately 375,000 German prisoners were held in over 500 American camps. The wage labor program, initiated due to agricultural labor shortages, paid POWs 10 to 80 cents daily based on skill. This contrasted sharply with Soviet POW camps, where roughly 1 million of 3.15 million German prisoners died from starvation, disease, and forced labor. This differential treatment fostered a generation of German veterans, like Klaus Richter, whose understanding of America stemmed from direct experience, not ideological propaganda. Camp Concordia, which held German POWs from 1943 to 1945, now hosts a museum run by the Cloud County Historical Society. It preserves artifacts like scrip currency, POW crafts, and oral histories from guards and locals, documenting a largely forgotten aspect of American home front history. Similar museums exist in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Academic research on the POW wage program, producing over 30 doctoral dissertations since 1980, explores topics from its economic impact on rural communities to its influence on Geneva Convention interpretations during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. The cultural exchange legacy proved remarkably enduring. German POWs worked in various capacities across the American Midwest and South, often forming lasting friendships with American guards and civilians, maintained through decades of correspondence. Hearne, Texas, site of Camp Hearne, holding up to 4,800 German prisoners, established a museum in 2006 documenting these relationships. Several documented cases exist of German POWs marrying American women after returning as immigrants in the 1950s. Algona, Iowa, a significant POW campsite, hosts an active historical society that has facilitated reunions for former prisoners and guards' families as recently as 2015. The contrasting treatment of Axis POWs by Americans versus American POWs by Axis forces significantly influenced post-war military policy. American POWs in German camps had a 96% survival rate, while those held by Japanese forces saw a 37% mortality rate. The principle of reciprocal adherence to the Geneva Convention became a cornerstone of post-1945 military ethics training. The US military's modern SEER, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, training integrates historical analysis of POW treatment, highlighting the strategic value of humane conduct. The wage labor program is specifically examined by the Army Judge Advocate General's Legal Center as a case study in balancing military necessity with international law. Documentation of the German POW experience accelerated after 1990 with German reunification. The collapse of the Soviet Union exposed the full brutality of Soviet camps, making the American experience appear even more exceptional. German historians published numerous comparative studies, with Arnold Kramer's 1979 Nazi Prisoners of War in America remaining the definitive English account, detailing camp conditions, labor programs, and repatriation using American military archives and interviews. Subsequent German-language scholarship, like Matthias Reis's 2002 study, Die Schwarzen waren unsere Freunde, explored racial dynamics and German POW interactions with African American guards and workers in American camps. The modern significance of this historical episode extends beyond academia. Immigration patterns from Germany to the US in the 1950s and 1960s included a disproportionate number of former POWs who experienced American captivity. Census analysis by the German Historical Institute in Washington indicates that former American-held POWs were 3 times more likely to emigrate to the US. This created networks of German Americans whose perspectives, shaped by wartime captivity, influenced business, cultural exchanges, and political attitudes during the Cold War. The wage labor program's legacy influenced American military detention policy through the late 20th century. During the 1991 Gulf War, Iraqi POWs were compensated for labor under Geneva Convention provisions, a practice continued in Afghanistan and Iraq after 2001. The economic logic that perplexed Klaus Richter, paying enemy prisoners for work, became standard American military practice, rooted in legal compliance and the practical recognition that compensated labor yields better results than forced labor. Military legal experts cite the W3 precedent during detainee operations training, emphasizing that humane treatment serves strategic interests. Klaus Richter's personal story reveals not just an individual biography, but a broader understanding of how the aftermath of war shapes societies. His return to Hamburg brought specific knowledge of American society that propaganda couldn't erase, a lived understanding of democratic capitalism fundamentally different from Nazi ideology. Multiplied across hundreds of thousands of returning POWs